Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing another episode of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights, which will be pretty interesting. So we haven't done one of these in a while, of course, so this is going to be a two-parter. We're kind of to do part 5 and 6 of the same week, so that's going to be fun. So let's get started. We're going to start with a couple of really cool little terrarium animals, and we have got here, most of these are done by a few people. We have got, this is one I really like, this is the Emerald Tree Boa. So these guys are really wonderful little guys. These guys come from South America. And they are non-venomous boa that were described in 2009. They can get quite big. They can get up to about 6 feet long, and they have very, very large teeth. So these guys are found around South America, particularly in Colombia, Brazil, Venezuela, and the Guanas. However you pronounce that. And they can be found around, you start with a couple different localities. There's the American locality and the basal locality, or species. So there's kind of a bit of confusion or interest with the taxonomy there, since there might be a couple species actually. These guys are pretty interesting. These guys eat a lot of small mammals and lizards and frogs that they can find in the trees because they're adapted to live in the canopies. And they have very slow metabolism, so they can survive in the canopies without finding too much to eat. And so they sit like this, these wonderful guys. I'll probably... That's the other one. Yeah. Keep forgetting how to do the other thing, but I think we can get a good look there already. Maybe if I go Alt F2. There we are. See if I can get a good look in there. So that's a wonderful guy. I really like the patterns on these guys. So yeah, these guys have been shown that they're it was thought that their diet was primarily birds, but it shows they kind of just eat whatever they can. And one thing they particularly like is, especially for the juveniles and neonates, is glass frogs, which are frogs that are not called glass frogs because they are partly transparent. And some species you can even see their organs. They're very, very interesting little animals. And these guys are ovoviviparous, where the females produce an average of 6 to 14 young at a time, sometimes even more. These litters, those litters are extremely rare. So these newborn juveniles have a distinct brick red to orange coloration, and they gradually grow through ontogenetic color and change into these kind of full emerald green when they're about 12 months old. So these are very, very interesting snakes. Very wonderful. So this replaces the yellow anaconda. I really like these guys. Quite cute, I think. And next we've got another cool little terrarium animal. We have got the banana slug. See if we can find it in there. There we are. We've got 2 in there. These replace the giant frog. Not that they replace the frog, they replace the tiger snail. No, that's a cool little thing. So these banana slugs are a genus called Allomax, which are North American slugs that got their name because they kind of look like a banana because they're bright yellow. There is about 4 different species. There's the California banana slug, found around California and Oregon. There's the Pacific banana slug, which are found in the United States. They can be found in Alaska, California, Idaho. Kind of confusing. It's kind of split the different species. Canada, British Columbia. Then there's the slender black slug, which is found in coastal central California, and the Costa Rican banana slug. So these guys are pretty cool. They often are these bright yellow, and that's where they get their name. The Pacific banana slug is the second largest terrestrial slug that grows up to 25 centimeters long, so that's pretty big. And the largest slug species can get about 30 or so, and they can live between 1 and 7 years. They're pretty cool. The ecology is they're detritivores or decomposers. They pretty much eat whatever they can, like animal droppings, moss, dead plant material, and then they recycle it. They would be known to have, like mushrooms, generally spread spores, and excrete a nitrogen-rich fertilizer. So that means they're very, very good for the environment. They kind of take the same role that worms do, so they kind of help fertilize and put nutrients back in the soil, and they're very important and should be protected to protect the biodiversity of the areas they live in, since they're very good at recycling nutrients. And they're a very famous and very lucky meal, or not lucky they should say, but a very favorite meal of raccoons, garter snakes, ducks, geese, and salamanders, where they roll their slugs on their in soil to bind the slime. And juvenile banana slugs can be eaten by moles and shrews. And the cool thing about it is that they secrete the slime. So there's a slime that they secrete that can numb the tongue of a predator. And this mucus can absorb 100 times the volume of water. So it's not really a liquid or solid, but it's kind of a crystal thing. It's very, very interesting. And many of its properties have been to interest materials engineers. So there's been a lot of research into that. And in the culture, it's very interesting that they have been used as food by Yurok natives on the north coast and German immigrants in the 19th and 20th century. And they kind of look around for slugs and eat them and sweat them in vinegar. That they're obviously, for the modern palate, they're not probably the most common thing to eat. And a lot of people are not really a fan of it. And they're so cool. I really like these guys. So look at these. So now we can exit out of this mode. I like this little guy. Oh, wonderful. Okay. Wonderful little guy. So now let's move on to the next animal. We have got the American flamingo, or here technically the Caribbean flamingo. So these guys are a close relative of course, the greater and Chilean flamingos, and were considered conspecific, which means they thought they would be the same species, but it's most likely considered now that they're their own species. And they're very, very cool animals, like all flamingos are. So these guys, the American flamingo breeds on the Galapagos Islands, coastal Colombia, Venezuela, and nearby islands, Brazil, Trinidad, the Bahamas, Virgin Islands, and southern Florida. The population in the Galapagos differs greatly from the Caribbean, as the Galapagos flamingos are significantly smaller, exhibit social dimorphism, and lay smaller eggs, and they're sometimes separated into their own subspecies. So they prefer habitats like saline lagoons, mudflats, and brackish coastal inland waters. And yeah, that's pretty cool. They can be found in Florida, around the South Florida and the Florida Keys, which is the most northern point of their distribution. And they were hunted, and their population was really, really destroyed there by collectors into the 1900s. And then they were pretty much escapaded, and then they sort of tried to bring them back there. There's been a large flock that's seen in 2014, about 147. So they're very slowly starting to come back to the Americas. Look at this wonderful guy just sitting there. This just replaces the female greater flamingo. So these are pretty large wading birds. They like to wade around, and they like to filter through their beak. Very, very interesting. They can measure about 120 to 145 centimeters tall. Male, on average, weighs about 2.8 kilograms, while female weighs 2.2. Most of their plumage gives them the name the rosy flamingo, because they are much paler. They're a lot more striking color than the greater flamingo. It's like a really bright blue. Oh, not blue, pink. I'm getting my colors mixed up today. So these guys have been studied extensive captivity. They've been known to be monogamous when selecting a nesting site, and they come and obviously they're very monogamous, come and take care of their eggs and nests and stuff. Very cool little guys. And what's really interesting is that these guys have the role of a really slow metabolism, and they have also regulation, which means they maintain a precise balance between the solute and water concentrations within the body, which is very important because often these guys feed in places that are very full of salt, like in mudflats, estuaries, salt lakes. So they have salt glands that are able to control the amount of salt in their body. It's very important, especially if you're an animal that spends a lot of time in salt water. And it's pretty interesting. And yeah, these guys also like to migrate short distances. They can be found or caught. They're not really migratory in the sense as they're like birds that fly from Siberia to New Zealand. They're not that sort of migratory, but they'll move around from areas with better food and elevated water levels. And they tend to wait around, and they'll stick for periods of time without eating even, just trying to find the best places to look for food. But no, these are really wonderful little guys, and I really like this mod. I think it really brings out their really striking pink colours, and I think that's pretty cool. So now we're going to be moving on to the next guy. We have got one little man over here. We've got the dwarf crocodile. He's clearly having a good time there. That's kind of cute. So this replaces the Cuvier's dwarf caiman. These guys are also known as the broad-snouted crocodile, African dwarf crocodile, bony crocodile. They're the smallest living species of crocodile, not the smallest species of crocodilian. They're slightly bigger than caiman, Cuvier's dwarf caiman. And these guys are very interesting because they're not that well studied. They've been found there are 3 distinct populations, and some of them have been divided subspecies. There's 2 subspecies. There's the obviously the nominate subspecies and the Congo or Osborne's dwarf crocodile. And there's a couple other populations, including one that lives in caves. And there's 4 different ones. The ones that live in caves, and they pretty much just survive on algae, and very, very interesting. They get all orange. Very interesting group. It's very fun to research on. They get about 1.5 meters in length, but their maximum record is about 1.9, so about 6 foot or so. And they can get between around 18 to 32 kilos, but the largest ones have been up to, largest females have been up to 40, and the largest males are up to 80. They are the smallest living crocodile species, so Cuvier's dwarf caiman is even smaller. And these guys are pretty cool. These guys are found around sub-Saharan West Africa, across the tropical regions. And they overlap a lot with the slender-snouted crocodile. They can be found in Senegal, Angola, and Uganda. Even though the last confirmed sighting of Uganda was in the 1940s. And may survive there, but just not many people looking. They tend to live in lowlands and serene, small rivers, swamps, and pools, and mangroves. And they avoid these large rivers. Very interesting little guys. They tend to spend a lot of time in the water. They don't really bask in the sun a lot. They move some distances at night, and they live in isolated pools when they live in the savannah. And these guys are mostly nocturnal and very timid little creatures. They tend to come out in the burrows at night. They're not very active during the day. They're pretty terrestrial for crocodiles. And they're generalist predators, kind of eating whatever they can. Shrews, fish, birds, gastropods, insects, lizards, whatever they can find really, which is pretty cool. And in the breeding season, the females will breed these big mounts, and they'll lay their eggs in it and incubate the eggs with decomposing plant material. A small number of eggs is laid, around 10, and a shrimp case up to 20. They incubate for about 85 to 105 days. Hatchlings measure about 28 centimeters long, and the female guards them, and because they're good mothers, and she kind of protects them, and the young can be eaten by a lot of predators, so that's why she needs to be around to protect them. So they're considered vulnerable and not very well known, but they could be at great risk because of bush hunting and deforestation. And there's a lot of demand for their leather for products, so it's very, very dangerous, and they could be at risk of being of extinction because there's so many dangers that they face. They're considered vulnerable at the moment, but they could probably be in even a worse state than we imagine, just because we don't really have enough information on them. But very cool animals nonetheless. And at least they're commonly kept in zoos, and we just don't know because of this potential species. It could potentially up to 4 species in this group, so we really have no idea. But they are pretty cool guys. Very, very sweet. So next we have got... This is one of my favorites. I love these little guys. We have got... I know they look pretty weird from here, but... We have got capybaras. These replace the reindeer, so they're not exactly perfect. Plus they're way too big. But anyway, they're very cool little guys. So these guys are found in North America, South America I mean, and they're the biggest rodent alive today. There have been bigger rodents in the past. They're divided into 2 species. There's the greater capybara and the lesser capybara, though this is most likely the greater capybara. And they are related to guinea pigs and rock cavies, which are pretty cool. And they live in savannas and dense forests, in their bodies of water around Brazil and live in these huge groups of up to 100 individuals, but usually live in groups of about up to 20 or so. So these guys are pretty cool. They have these very big barrel shapes. They have a funny for water. They're like little mini hippos. They can get pretty big too. They get to about 106 to 134 centimeters in length and stand 50 to 62 centimeters at the withers, and typically weigh between 35 and 66 kilos. The top recorded weight for a wild male was about 73 kilos from Uruguay, and these are extreme individuals. They can get just pretty big. Very big boys. Not those, but they're semi-aquatic, so they can be found around water areas. It's particularly like for areas like marshes, swamps, rivers, and flooded savannas. So that's their typical habitat. Very cool. You can see they're not the best. These guys are kind of friends of everyone, but they're also eaten a lot by people. They're actually a common delicacy. They're also eaten by caiman and jaguars, even though they're pretty much friends with everything else. They breed really fast, so they're actually probably a pretty good source of food. And when in estrus, the female puts the scent out, the males come pursuit, and they can get pretty aggressive when they're mating. They mate only in the water, and the female does not want to mate. She can just submerge or leave the water. Dominant males are highly protective, and they have a gestation period of about 130-150 days. They produce a litter of 4 capybara on average, but can have between 1 and 8 in a litter, and they're very cute. When they join the group as soon as they're mobile, within a week the young can eat grass but continue to suckle, and they usually wean about 16 weeks. The young form a group within the main group and kind of just do their own thing. So they're prolific breeders, like most rodents are, which is pretty cool. So sadly they're considered a threatened species, even though their populations are stable, but these areas hunting has reduced their numbers. They're hunted for meats and pelts, and they, even though they've adapted well to urbanization, they do have issues with contracting diseases and such. They farm for meat in some areas, even though it's considered unsustainable. And they are just wonderful little boys. I think they're quite cute. I'm not sure how this mod really look. You can see from the background they just look like a weird reindeer. But that's just, I think, just the technical ability sometimes. Modding Planet Zoo is pretty hard, actually. You'd be surprised. So now we're going to be moving on to the next one. This one's cool. I like this little one. We have got, this replaces the red panda. We have got the Binturong. He's one of my favorites. I love Binturong. So Binturongs, also known as bear cats, Viserids, so they're kind of related to civets and things. They're found in South and Southeast Asia. They're uncommon, but they're considered vulnerable. And their population has decreased about 30%. Though there may potentially be 2 species, like a Philippine form. These guys have these very long, thick coats, where they get the name bear cats. And they have a long prehensile tail, so they use to grab things, kind of like a monkey. They're very cool guys. They can be found around India, Nepal, Philippines, which might have their own species. They can be found pretty much around Southeast Asia, Java, Sumatra, Vietnam, Cambodia, a lot of those areas. So these guys are fed pretty much whatever they can, day and night, and they just go around eating what they can. They're arboreal, which means they like to live in trees, and when they like to curl up, they tuck their tails in. They're very cute. And they're very famous for smelling like popcorn. It's just because some of the scents they make smell like popcorn. It's very interesting. It's kind of how they used to communicate as well. And they are obviously quite shy, but they can get quite aggressive. And they're often urinate or defecate when a threat, and then they snarl, and if they don't get away by the poo and pee, they kind of just snarl and try and scare them away. Potential predators for these animals include things like leopards, clouded leopards, and reticulated pythons, so that's how to be careful about. So these guys are also pretty generalist. They kind of eat whatever they can, small mammals, eggs, fish, rodents, insects, fruits, really whatever. Fish and earthworms are likely unimportant, as they really live in the trees, but just really whatever they can. They don't really mind too much about what they eat. The binturong is also very important for seed dispersal, especially for those of the strangler fig, and that's part of how they spread around the forest, by using binturong to spread their seeds. Oh, it's kind of stacked the poo on each other. It's kind of funny. This is pretty cool. They reach about sexual maturity at about 30 months, and for females, and 27 months for males. The estrus cycle lasts 187 days, with an average of 82 days for Binturong. Gestation lasts about 99 to 84 days. Litter size can be 1 to 6, average of 2 young per birth. They're very small neonates or young, and they're quite long-lived. The maximum known lifespan is up to 25 years, so they live life a bit on the slower lane. So one of the biggest issues for these guys, of course, with a lot of animals in Southeast Asia is deforestation and habitat loss, because logging is a very huge issue there, and also the wildlife trade, especially in the Philippines, where these guys are traded for medicines and human consumption, which is really damaging to their populations. It's kind of this. It's a similar situation to elephants and lions and rhinos. It's very dangerous. So considered vulnerable, but that may be changing. But they are also kept in captivity commonly, and it's very good that they are in there so they can have genetic diversity for their conservation. So hopefully these guys do a little better. I like Binturongs very much. Not that much like a Binturong, but it's pretty cool. I like it a lot. So now we have got another cool boy. We're going to start with the alligator snapping turtle. So this is made of the Capybara. It's kind of walking around a little too much, doesn't look too bad. Interesting looking. I kind of like how they did the shell and changed it. It's quite nice. So the alligator snapping turtle is native to the United States and is the largest freshwater turtle in North America and one of the larger ones in the world, even though there's the Yangtze soft shells that are really big. So there was believed to be one species, but they actually split into two now. There is a Sonui snapping turtle and the Appalachian snapping turtle, and there's potentially a third species, which is that one. And generally they're not recognized, but there's potentially up to 2 or 3 species, which is pretty cool. The alligator snapping turtle gets its name because of its powerful jaws, of course. They can easily take off your hand. It's also called the loggerhead snapper, which kind of looks like a loggerhead sea turtle or musk turtle. You got to be careful not to confuse those. So these guys are from the southeastern United States, from Florida to East Texas, Kansas, Missouri, western Tennessee, and they tend to live a lot in water. Only the females come on land to lay eggs. And there's non-native populations of alligator snapping turtles established in South Africa, which is very, very bad. These guys have these very big, long, heavy heads. Very wonderful. Very famous for these very powerful bites. This really prehistoric look with spikes on the carapace. The largest one that we have that's not verified is 183 kilos. But there's one that's been found that was 113 kilos. So they generally range. These exceptionally large individuals can be up to 80 centimeters long and weigh about 80 kilos. Males are typically a little bit larger, but they can get pretty big. They're pretty big. If these largest estimates are to be compared, they can get to the size of Yangtze giant soft shells and very, very big compared to other freshwater turtles. So the thing is that these guys kind of really just eat anything. They're pretty much carnivorous, but they'll eat anything. They'll eat fish carcasses, snakes, snails, water birds, aquatic plants, small alligators even. They just really eat whatever they can. Very, very cool. And one of the cool things that they do is that they have a very little on their tongue they have a little lure that they use. It looks like a little worm that helps attract fish and stuff into their mouths and then snap and then they're dead. So these guys are also very long-lived. They reach maturity at about 12 years old. Mating takes place yearly in early spring on the southern part of their range and later spring on the northern part. So they can have a clutch of about 10 to 50 eggs, and depending on the temperature, either males or females will be born. High temperatures usually produce more males, and lowers more female. And they kind of walk around. And the thing is, we have no idea how long they live. Though a potential lifespan is unknown, it is believed that they can live up to 200 years, with 880 to 120 most likely. In captivity, they usually live between 20 and 70, but it's very possible that they could live up to 200 years because they found like muskets shells in their own shells. So that shows you their age. So predation, other than when they're babies, they get eaten by birds, but also hunting's another very big threat. So their conservation status is that they used to be very overly collected for meat and their swamp habitats being destroyed. But recently, with a lot of the protections in place, they've been considered endangered and they've been protected in a lot of areas that they live. So that is pretty good. And then we'll get to move on to the next one. So I really like this little guy. It's quite nice, heading for the snack tree. And now we have got the Barbary sheep, or the Aodad. This one's just a male. So they've got this very charismatic kind of beard they got here. These guys are from the Rocky Mountains of North Africa. And they've been introduced into South America and Southern Europe though, which is a little bit sad, but these guys can get quite big. They get about like 3 foot at the shoulder with a length of 1.5 meters, or at the shoulder where they stand, so about 5 feet tall. They weigh about between 40 to 140 kilos, and they are sandy brown. They're darkened with age, and they have this very shaggy, sort of goatee down their mane, down their throat. So they're very cool looking. And they got very big horns too that can curve and they can extend 76 centimeters, and they can even wrinkle at the base as the animal matures. So the natural range is in Northern Africa, around Chad, Egypt, Morocco, Niger, Sudan, and the Nile. But they've been introduced in southwest Spain and the southwestern United States, which is competing with local caprines like chamois, I think that's how you probably pronounce them, and the bighorn sheep, so they compete there. So they're very, very cool. Even though there is one species known, but there's up to about subspecies, a few different subspecies around, with one thought to be extinct. And these guys live in arid mountainous areas with grazy browse, whatever they can eat really. And it's cool, they're crepuscular. That means they're active in early morning and afternoon, especially in the desert. And these guys are very, very agile. They can jump off over 2 meters and are well adapted for these habitats where they live. This is where they would live in kind of escape from predators. The main predators before humans escapaded them were Barbary leopards, the Barbary lion, and caracals. Now only caracals really remain, and now it's really only caracal and humans that affect their populations. So yeah, still pretty cool though. I really like these guys. They're having a nice sleepy sleep. Wonderful animals. And now, last but not least, this is one of my favorites. I'm a big fan of these silly pigs. I'm a big fan. We have got the Babarusa. Now let's have a look at it. Now, Babarusa are pretty weird guys. Let's have a look at you over here. I want to get a good look at you. Look at you go. So Babarusas, also known as deer pigs, are found around Wallacea, or specifically around the islands in Indonesia of Sulawesi, Togan, Sula, and Baru. They were considered a single species in 2002, where they were split into 3 or 4 species, depending who you ask. And the most common one that you see is the North Sulawesi Babarusa, or B. subris. And they are very, very prehistoric looking because of these weird teeth that they have. It's very interesting. So they're very famous for having these canines that they have out that it's a very common fact, but if they don't keep them maintained, it will grow and grow and grow until it goes back into the skull and punches their brain. That's pretty damn metal. And it's pretty interesting, so they got to take care of that. And the other species do have the same thing, so there's these cool canines that they got to take care of. So these guys are found around Sulawesi, some of the Togan Islands, the Sula Islands, and Baru. In Sulawesi, they reach the northern peninsula to the southeastern provinces. So it's very, very interesting. They're solitary. Males with adult females can be found in groups with young. Typically, these groups of female and young can be up to 84 individuals, which contain no adult males. Males rarely travel in pairs or trios, so they kind of keep to themselves and don't make these big groups. And the tusks that they use is for intraspecific sparring, so that's why they grow them out. So if they do not grind their tusks down, they'll eventually grow into their skull and penetrate it. So relationship with humans, they are kind of revered by the culture. They create these demonic masks because they kind of look like demons, don't they? And there's prehistoric paintings that have been found around Sulawesi that have been dated back to about 35,000 years ago, which was like the Ice Age, and they found paintings of Babarusa. Very cool guys. So these guys are protected in the habitats that they live in, but they are still poached quite regularly. And obviously a big problem also in Indonesia, habitat loss, and also just makes them more vulnerable to poachers and losing habitat. That means there's less places that can support the Babarusa. But I have some, these are pretty good guys. This obviously replaces the warthog. I just want to get one walking around, or are they all sleeping? They're all in the sleeping mode, aren't they? Are you gonna get up? I just love how wrinkly they look. I think they're cool. And now he's purring. So yeah, this is a really nice mod. I quite like this one. Babarusas are a cool species. I like Planet Zoo mods, honestly, because I get to introduce people to a lot of really weird species that live with us today, and the more pressing conservation issues that presents. So yeah, this has been part 5, and I've really enjoyed showing you these ones. I can't wait to show you guys part 6. There's some more bigger animals going in there. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to click that little bell icon at the bottom there, so you always get notified whenever I upload anything. And yeah, stay on the lookout for part 6. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. You guys like and subscribe, and bye bye.